we want to give some help with the preterite tense. The preterite tense is a past tense, and what you do is you start with the regular infinitive, or the infinitive, and drop the AR, the ER, and the IR from it. Once you do that, then you add the endings, las terminaciones, that you see here in red. When we use the preterite tense, for example, if I'm using hablar, I drop the AR, and in the yo form, I add the E with the accent mark. Yo hablé. So then I produce something like I did talk, or I did speak, or even I spoke, I talked. We do have to be careful because with the preterite verb tense, the yo form of certain AR verbs experience a spelling change. The verbs that end in car, gar, zar, as shown here, the C changes to QU, then you add your E with an accent mark. So buscar becomes busqué, I looked for. Gar, the G becomes GU, then you add your appropriate ending in the yo form, which is E with an accent mark. Yo llegué, I arrived. Zar, the Z changes to a C, then add your E with an accent mark. So almorzar, to have lunch. Yo almorcé, I had lunch. Again, this only happens in the yo of certain AR verbs that end in car, gar, and zar. There is good news with the preterite verb tense. AR and ER verbs do not have a spelling stem change in them in the preterite tense. Again, that is good news. When do we use the preterite? Pues usamos el pretérito para reportar eventos completados o para narrar. So we use the preterite in order to talk about things that started and finished or were completed in the past. Or many people say the preterite is used to advance your story forward. It advances your narrative forward, meaning this happened, then that happened, then this happened. Those verbs would be used in the preterite, sequencing events in the past. An example here is comer. Yo comí mucho. This eating happened and started yesterday. There are irregular verbs in the preterite. IR verbs become irregular in the preterite if they were irregular in the present tense. So again, if a verb was irregular in the present tense, if an IR verb was irregular in the present tense, it will be irregular in the preterite tense. But it will only experience this irregularity or stem change in the third persons, él, ella, usted, or in the ellos, ellas, ustedes. The two changes that can occur, the E of the original infinitive could change to an I, or the O of the original infinitive could change to a U. Here's an example. Preferir. Preferir is an IR verb that had a stem change in the present tense. It will have a stem change in the preterite tense, but only in the third persons. The él, ella, usted, or the ellos, ellos, ustedes. Note in red, the E changed to I. Morir is another example. The O changes to U, but this can only happen in the third persons. Él, ella, ustedes, or ellos, ellos, ustedes. Here's another example. Servir. It was stem changing in the present tense. Since it was an IR verb that had a stem change in the present tense, it will have a stem change in the preterite tense, but only in the third person. The E of the original infinitive, servir, changes to an I. There are other verbs that follow this pattern. You see them here at the bottom of your screen. Pedir, preferir, repetir, seguir, sentir, and servir. Another irregularity happens in the preterite verb tense. Verbs that end in ER or IR can experience a spelling change in the third persons. With ER and IR verbs, if you drop the ER or the IR, and if your stem is left with a vowel, A, E, I, O, U, then instead of writing IO in the third person, el, ellos, usted, you'll have to change that I to a Y. And in the ellos, ellos, ustedes, you'll have to change that I-E-R-O-N, you'll have to change the I of that ending to a Y. This can happen with creer, leer, and oír. Again, if you drop the ER or the IR off of a verb, if it leaves the last letter of the stem as a vowel, then in the third person, you'll have to change the I to a Y. Leer is an example of this. Leer, when I drop the ER, LE is what's left as the stem. The E is a vowel. So now the third person will have the I changed to a Y. This is because Spanish does not want certain triphthongs to be written. Triphthongs meaning three vowels in a row. Certain triphthongs are illegal in Spanish. Note also with these type of verbs that all forms, the yo, the tú, the nosotros, the vosotros, the él y usted, have an accent mark. But the ellos, ellas, ustedes version will not. There are other preterite oddities that occur. In the preterite, ser equals ir. They look the same in the preterite. And also dar and ver look very similar. Dar looks like it's an er-ir verb in the preterite tense. Here is a page that tries to summarize what we just said. That with certain IR verbs that have a stem change in the present tense, they'll have a stem change in the preterite. Here you see pedir pictured and dormir pictured. You have this document under course documents. It's posted there. So even if you can't see everything correctly, you can go under Blackboard, course documents, and you'll see this exact page there. Furthermore, we talked about at times the I of the ending IO, or the I of the ending IERON, the I may have to change to a Y. Again, this occurs when certain triphthongs happen, three vowels in a row. Another document you will see in Blackboard are what I call the hyper-irregulars of the preterite. With the hyper-irregulars, there are no accents at all on this page. But do note, with the hyper-irregulars, there is a pattern formed. Note, the yo form commonly ends with an E. Look at estar and tener. The tú form commonly ends in ISTE. The él y usted ends with the O. The nosotros ends in IMOS. The vosotros ISTEIS. And the ellos, ellos, ustedes, IERON. So even though these are highly irregular preterites, they seem to have a pattern at times. Memorize these patterns together. Again, these documents that you're seeing are posted in Blackboard under course documents. Here are some other highly irregular verbs in the preterite, but they too follow that ending, the yo with the E, the tú with the iste, the él y usted with that final O, the nosotros with the IMOS, the vosotros with the ISTEIS, and the ellos, ellos, ustedes with the IERON. Do note that with hacer, the third person singular is hizo, or in Spain, hizo, Hizo. You have to memorize that separately. And then notice with decir and traer, notice that the third person here, there's no I following the J. So decir, and the ellos version is dijeron, Dijeron. And for to bring, traer, trajeron. Again, this document is posted so that you can look at it on Blackboard. Now, here's your quiz. I need for these verbs, the correct form of the verbs to be written and emailed to me. Email it to kilpatrick-j@mssu.edu before 11 p.m. this Thursday, November 21st. If you have any questions, feel free to call or text me at 785-691-8475.